Welcome back, everybody, to the Pat Flynn Show. We have Dan John, and we are teleporting him in through the internet. He is in a very interesting looking hotel room, I have to say. For those of you who can't see this on YouTube, it's very curtainy.
Well, the problem is the sun's coming up right over my left shoulder, so I'm kind of sort of dealing with a sunrise serenade here. So, but yeah, I guess Beautiful. It's okay for me to share my location. I'm in a place called San Diego, which I discovered in a movie called Anchorman, the real meaning of the word. Yesterday, I spent way too many hours in the ocean, and I did something I haven't done in, I'm thinking, about 13 years yesterday, young Patrick. I ran.
Wow.
Yeah, when one has necrotic hips and titanium, it was kind of fun. It started off with me just kind of seeing if I could, and then before I knew it, my grandson Danny taunted me, so I chased him. I chased him for a while, didn't I?
You did.
We chased like Danny and Danny chasing each other for no apparent reason, and it was. I got to tell you, I know this is completely off the mark, but there was that weird tired you get when you run. I haven't had that feeling in. Well, I just haven't had that feeling in so long, and it's funny to say it out loud because a lot of our listeners are probably thinking, "Well, so what?" But what happens, I think, in life is you don't really notice something until it's taken away from you.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. When you lose a friend or a sibling, or even if something, it doesn't have to be that sad. When someone or moves away, or if you move away, you don't even notice what you miss. Growing up on Ramona Avenue there in South San Francisco, I could walk outside and be playing within 30 seconds with, anywhere from 5 to 10 people, either a sport or hide and go seek or tag or 1 foot off the gutter. And, when I drive around now, I don't see kids playing outside anymore. And it's funny. I don't even know if they know what they're missing. So, and with my running on the beach yesterday, I didn't even know I was missing it until I did it again. So I don't know.
Well, that's what it's all about, right? I mean, yeah, when we're young, yes, we want what do we want? We want the 6-pack abs. We want all the glory, all the fame. But running on the beach with your grandson, right? Yeah. And that's something I totally, as a younger trainer, I would have older clients come to me and they say like, "Hey, this is what I want," and like I couldn't comprehend it at the time, right? It just didn't connect with me because it was too. I hate to say that you're too young to understand something because it sounds really condescending and it's something that was said to me and I always was annoyed when it was said to me, but it's true. But there are just some things that are very difficult to appreciate below a certain age or a certain experience level.
Isn't that amazing? When I talk to people who are in the fitness business side, I got to be careful. I don't want to mention names, but we both would know them who specialize in the business side of things. And when they tell me that personal trainers, the average an 18-month career is kind of the norm, if not actually a little bit high from my experiences. And I think part of the reason personal training sounds so good, I'll be in the gym all day, I'll be, rubbing elbows with beautiful people. But the truth is, I got to say it, most of your clients are going to look more like me, broken face, broken, body. And what I want is to be able to run on the beach with my grandson and boogie board and, get out of bed in the morning, it's interesting, but so much of life, I've recently begun this thing, Patrick, where I'm trying to read a short story every day and a poem every day. I got this advice from Ray Bradbury. And a couple of the short stories I've already read were short stories I read as a child. When I was younger, whatever that was. And I had no appreciation for what was going on there. And experience is a brutal teacher. Let's just say that nicely.
Give us a short story you've read recently, Dan, that might be worth the time of
Well,
the
I have to
listeners.
find it for you, but it's William Carlos Williams, and it's about a doctor. It's during when diphtheria was bad, and really it's William Carlos Williams is most famous for his short poem. So much relies on a white wheelbarrow filled with water in near the chicken coop. It basically, all the animals, and that's his most famous poem. So it's along those lines. But it's during the rage of diphtheria, and the child has a temperature, but she keeps saying her throat isn't sore and refuses to get a throat culture. Well, when the doctor finally gets back there, she has diphtheria. But it's a very weirdly brutal, she bites down and breaks a wooden spoon. He finally has to grab her. The doctor's so frustrated with the parents. Well, the girl knows that she has this terrible disease and doesn't want to burden anybody with it. And that's it. There's the whole story. Just told you folks, you're done.
Right.
I've always thought that the short story, Ray Bradbury recommends a writers write a short story every week. And his point is, it's impossible to write 52 bad short stories.
Why, it does amaze me of how there's this disconnect. And I have to plead guilty, even myself, in many areas of life, where in some areas of life, we know what's the secret to getting better: practice, and practice frequently. I want to be a better musician. I better do something on the fretboard every day. I want to move well. I better do some type of movement, probably more days than most, if not every day. Not the same movement, not at the same intensity, but frequency is good. Writing seems to be one of these huge disconnects, Dan. I'm sure you get tons of people ask me, how do I write a book? How do I be consistent with it? You write. you just whether it's a certain amount of time or a certain number of words, 1,000 words a day, 20 minutes a day, or Bradbury's, I guess, one short story a week, whatever it is. There's just this interesting disconnect. And it seems specific to writing too, where people think that doing everything around the specific activity is how you get better at the activity rather than doing the activity itself. I'll read 50 books on writing, but I'll never actually write anything. Or I'll take a bunch of courses on writing, but I'll never actually write anything. Or I'll send Dan John 1 million emails on writing, but I'll never actually write anything. What's going on there, Dan? And am I the only one who notices this disconnect?
No, I've always thought we bleed writing out of people. I was lucky, of course. My school was a great book school, so we were given some interesting assignments, and I've shared my probably my all-time favorite. We read Robinson Crusoe, and then we read Swiss Family Robinson, and the assignment was simple: who are the 5 people, including yourself, who are the other 4 people you would take on a deserted island? And that was the assignment. And that's it. that's all it is. And what was great about that is that you had to defend your answer, but it wasn't. You must have a 5-paragraph. The introductory sentence has to introduce the new paragraph. The next 3 sentences then explain the point, and then there's a conclusion paragraph, and you do that. And what's funny about the 5-paragraph essay? It's quite good, but it's stilting. It is absolutely brutal in what it does to someone's kind of ability to write. I've always said, when people ask me how I became a writer, when I was in the 7th grade, we were given an assignment to free write something. And I always joke, I got something I never heard in my life. At the end of that, I got a compliment. Being from an Irish family, being the youngest of 6, compliments just Christmas and Thanksgiving. Well, actually, decades come more often than compliments in an Irish home. And I got the teacher complimenting my writing, and I was just shocked because, I was but I hope you understand what I'm saying here. We wrote a lot at our school. We read a lot at our school. And then finally, when we were given a free assignment, I did well. And I'm wondering, Patrick, maybe a lot of people didn't put the reading in earlier, didn't practice the chords, didn't practice the kettlebell swing, and then when they just immediately went to free writing.
Right. Yeah. And this is the idea of,
I'm wondering,
you can't put improvisation before integration or even isolation, right? If you try to improv on a musical instrument without having the chops down, it's gonna be garbage. It's gonna be trash. Now you want to get to being able to improv, because improv is just a spontaneous demonstration of your technical ability. That's what it is, right? But if you don't have the technical ability, you have nothing to improv with, right? And anybody who has practiced improv or is good at it knows that you're just drawing upon all this ingrained ability that you have and just trying to form coherent connections as you move along, right? So you're not getting something out of nothing. That's not what's happening, right?
if I could add one more thought onto, if you write, it does become public. You know, I remember when I won this poetry contest back in 80 or 81. Professor Johnson asked me for copies of my poems, and so I gave him. He goes, and he said something, and I'm not putting, not because he certainly wrote in his field, but he goes, I write a lot of poetry for myself. And even at the time, I thought that was odd, because it's the publicness. For example, I would imagine improving by yourself in your basement with the doors closed probably happens. But if you said that, but a musician probably would say to you, yeah, man, but you got to get out there. Even if it's on the street, you got to go to a park. You got to go up on a stage. Agreed?
Oh, well, I mean, there's no substitute for it. And one of the best advantages that I've had early on was one of my guitar instructors. He made me get out and perform. And it's one of those things that if you don't do that, preferably early and often, that's very hard to overcome. It's very hard to overcome. But if you do it early and often, it's exposure therapy. You get used to it. And then it doesn't become that different playing in front of other people as it would be playing for yourself. And this is obviously true, right? It is easy to play for yourself because, even though we're our own worst critic, it always feels a little bit worse when other people criticize us.
Well,
right.
In trying to explain intensity to my students, not just to my students at St. Mary's, but my students and people online. I mean, God bless you people, but I don't know what a percent means to you, because when you step on a platform and it's more weight than you've ever attempted before, if you make it, you're national champion. If you miss it, you're fourth place. Tell me what percent that is. Well, I don't know what it is either, because it's what you need to lift. And when you step up on the platform, you get in the ring, you step on the field to play, you step on the pitch, you get on the court. It's much different than you practicing free throws by yourself in an empty park, and the intensity level. That's why I hate it when people ask about easy strength, about what is intensity. It's, I mean, reaching so deep into your soul to make a lift, or, to win is radically different than, than just training by yourself at the 24-hour spa on the leg extension machine.
Right. And, because, no, go ahead.
Oh, and it's, so these people ask me, like on easy strength, they'll ask me about percents, and it's like, I have got no idea what light feels to you. I got no idea what medium feels like. I don't know what the percent's going to be. I don't. Because I got to tell you, man, there are times I'll go in the gym and 135 feels, I'm peeling that thing off the floor. It's like, whoa, that thing, did someone glue it down? And then sometimes, one hand deadlift 405, and it's like, oh, I forgot to put the other one on there. I don't know, but I think that's why, I always put lifting, life, and learning always kind of in the same place. The lessons I learn in the weight room really apply better to life than much of what I've learned.
Mhm.
It's progressive. As you get better, it gets harder. You can be the best. We always joke here. You could be the best opera singer in Rock Springs, Wyoming, and that's good for you. But when you go out to Wisconsin, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And when you go from Wisconsin to New York, it's going to be even more difficult. And it's always, life is progressively harder.
And you get less and less juice for the squeeze.
Oh, keep going on that. Go.
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example, right? So I actually did get, for people who don't know, my undergrad, I did get a small scholarship for music for jazz performance, actually. And it's true, like, it wasn't that hard for me to be the best musician. And I won the most musically talented award in high school, won the jazz band competitions, and even, for best soloist and stuff like that. I got them folded up here somewhere. But even just going from the local level to the collegiate level, I mean, I was easily not even close to the best musician. And that was a huge ego check, right?
Yeah.
When I started going to these auditions, or if I was the best, I was the best at only one small thing, but I would see how not well-rounded I was in other areas, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Where I could no longer rely on being the best at one small thing to carry me through. And I was actually forced to become something more of a generalist. Yes, and that's true. And what do you have to do while you're already practicing on guitar? 6 hours a day. Now you need to practice more and do better at it for less and less juice from the amount of the squeeze. So that's the idea, right? Is that as you get better and better, as you become more experienced, I mean, I think you just said it gets harder, and you have to put in more effort, and you have to adjust your expectations because you're going to get less and less out of that effort. And that's just a fact. There ain't no way around that. And you're either going to have to accept it, and you're going to have to do one of two things. You're going to have to keep just squeezing that piece of fruit as much as you can, or you're going to have to say, I've got enough juice and I'm good with where I'm at on this, and now I want to go do something else with my time. So yeah, you can either become a more hardcore specialist, or you can say, all right, I'm happy with that there, and now maybe I want to be more of a generalist, right?
Yeah. And well, there's today's life lessons, folks. And it does always get hard. The higher and higher you go. But I will say one more thing, if you don't mind. The higher you go in any field, at least in my experience, the nicer people become. And
That's true.
I first heard that from Earl Nightingale. And I thought, well, I don't know. But the higher you go, the nicer people are. When I hear people rip on like a Mike Boyle, or even I perform better with a Chris Poyer and stuff, I'm always like, why you? He'll answer any question anytime. He'll do his best just because you think, when you're 6 months as a personal trainer, that smashing your face against the wall, is good. He doesn't, and I've always found that really an interesting thing, how kind people are as you move up.
Right.
And not always true. Obviously, I can think of a great exception, but yeah, mostly, yeah.
Yeah, it's all the kind of stuff in between that's often unpleasant.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think once you get, and I keep going back to the music world, I've had opportunities to play with some very, very top tier musicians. I'm not like friends with any of them, but I was always struck by that how genuinely unassuming so many of them were. The other thing that always struck me too was the only word I can think for it is the dumb practicality. There's just like that people at a super high level have, because I'll meet somebody who is just an incredible musician, like absolutely incredible, and I'll be like, this guy's got to be an absolute genius, right? And not to say they're dumb, but that's usually not the case. they just don't get in their own way. And in fact, I think intelligence can be a barrier at some points where people overthink some. So there's just this dumb practicality where they don't overthink things and they just work and work and work and work and work and work. And they don't think too much about it. And like you ask them a question of how do you work so much? How are you so productive? And like they don't even understand the question half the time. They just go, because I want to play the guitar.
Yeah.
That's it.
I want to throw the discus. I like
I want to throw the discus. That's it. Yeah, the usefulness of dumb practicality. That's there's something there, right?
There's your thing for that's the title of this week's podcast.
Mm-hmm. Actually, the other title I wanted to jam about, Dan, I'm sure you get emails around this time of year. People want holiday survival guides, right? And I think there's two ways we can approach this, right? One is from, okay, we can give you some practical tips. Another is from mindset, because I think we would both agree that people often approach this with not a very healthy mindset, a very anxiety-ridden mindset. So it's kind of like two directions I kind of want to go with this. I want to give the advice, but at the other time I want to say, does it really matter, right? So,
yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm.
We've gone from, with Thanksgiving and Christmas and even New Year's being 3 days a year to being 6 weeks. And
right.
One practical thing would be just simply
keep the holiday.
Holiday, thank you. It doesn't have to be, there's this thing called dessert, and some people call it treats. When I was young, if mom cooked something and it took her 3 hours to do it, we had a treat, but that wasn't a daily thing. It wasn't for showing up to class or every night thing. And I think what's happened is that every day is a holiday. In a sense, it truly is, but you don't have to overindulge every single day for the next 6 weeks. You can certainly first big picture, pick and choose wisely when to overindulge. And I'm suggesting 3 to 5 times. 6 times. I'll give you once a week.
Yeah. I think it's a good structure throughout the week too, right? I like most days of the week just eating normal, healthy. I like fasting maybe 2 days a week, a little bit more.
Sure.
And then 1 day a week, typically Sundays, you ease the restrictions. And there you go, right? And then if you have a structure like that, and we've talked about this before, Dan, about how important it is to have the fast before the feast, right? If you're just feasting all the time, that's an issue. If you're just fasting all the time, that's an issue too, right? We need the fasting and the feasting. So if that structure is already in place and you're not feasting for an entire 6 weeks straight, I mean, my advice is just enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Enjoy the holidays, but just keep the holiday. Thanksgiving is Thanksgiving. It's not 4 weeks. It's just on Thursday, whatever day it is. I forget what day it is. Christmas is just Christmas, and that's it. And then there's nothing really else you have to do, right? Just don't know what else more to really say about it at that point.
Back in the 70s, there was, when they first started working on brown fat. Now this is a different world than we live in now, and it truly is. But they found that after Thanksgiving, people increased their healthy, which is they're really good, their brown fat, because you basically told the body, there is food. I don't need to hold on to body fat anymore. So there was a belief in the 70s that feasting was actually good for reducing body fat. Now, the world of the food of the 70s is different than the food of the 2020s. The food of 1910 is radically different than the food of 1970. Because you don't have the hyper processed foods. You follow my point? I
do.
So one of the things that they believed is if you do feast occasionally, your body says, okay, there is no pandemic, there is no worldwide issue. We're okay. it's harvest time. It's the time to eat berries. Okay. And when you come to the berry patch, eat all the berries. They're only going to be there a week or two.
Right.
So I guess I'm more nodding, and I always have, Patrick, to the idea that I think it's okay to have a big Thanksgiving meal. I think it's okay to have a big Christmas platter. I've always
with the rolls, with the mashed potatoes.
right. My concern is, first off, turning that into 52 weeks, turning this into, and I do like your idea of the fast. Wednesday might be a really good day to clean the house and maybe back off on your munching on Wednesday. Wednesday might be a really good day to do the work of Thanksgiving. That's fine, and then enjoy it the next day.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. So that's good. I don't know if there's a whole bunch more to say about that. Be reasonable is a theme we always come back to. That's Dan John's line: reasonableness, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Shall we turn to some questions?
I think that's a great idea. We seem to be a lull here. Yes.
Yes, excellent. There's a little choppiness in the audio. Apologies for that, gentle listeners. Like I said, we're bringing Dan John in from a hotel, but I can make it out, so I think we're all right.
Okay.
The first one comes from David Ben Moshi. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And he says, this is more of a comment than a question. After listening to your podcast a few weeks ago, I decided to try a one-page fiction piece. I love it. By the way, I love this, Dan. I love when people take up our sort of auxiliary assignments, if you will.
Excellent.
Then I had a great experience about pretty good eating and ended up writing a one-page nonfiction piece about it. Hope you enjoy it. And then he gives me the link. So it's too long. I'm not going to read the whole thing here. But what I will do is, Dan, I'll send it to you so you can look at it. But then I'll also link it in the show notes over at chroniclesofstrength.com. We'll give our friend David here a well-deserved shout out and a link to his website as well. I did take a peek. He's doing good stuff over there. So definitely go check out what he's doing.
Yeah, that's rather cool.
Yes, very, very good. I'm still getting, by the way, I just want to let everyone know, I'm still getting the fitness haikus. So I haven't been able to respond to everyone. In fact, Dan, do you mind if we just read one right now, because they've been piling up in my inbox?
Absolutely, I insist. Yes.
I feel bad if they just sit there. So this one comes from Elizabeth K. It's called her Advent Fitness Haiku, Dan. She says, 3 wise men with gifts of wit, wisdom, and wordplay: Pat, Dan, and Alex. So there we have it. She threw Alex in there too. Good. It's very nice.
That's very nice.
So I just want to say, I'm getting your fitness haikus, gentle listeners. If you still want to send them in, we'll read an occasional one here on the podcast. If you have no idea what we're talking about, you got to go listen to a previous episode. I've still got a few. Dan John sent me a ton of codes for his audiobook of attempts. So if you want to make an attempt at a haiku, you might win attempts on an audiobook. So
that's great.
Elizabeth, I'll send you a code. So keep an eye out for that. Okay. Now to an actual question. This one comes from Mickey. Mickey says, my wife and I are expecting our first child in May 2021. Congratulations. That's fantastic. Would love to get yours and Dan's advice and tips to prepare for this, both physically and mentally. I am 31, former rugby player from New Zealand, and my wife is 28 and pretty fit. We have a small home gym and barbell and kettlebells and live down a steep driveway. All right, Dan, let's crack our knuckles here. Your life is about to change, my friend. What advice we have for Vicky, aside from congratulations?
We with my daughter that they're expecting at the exact same time, so that's kind of nice. We discussed this over at Dan John University, and Lisa Wise, in fact, I think she's from New Zealand also. She gave us some really good advice about, and it really came around, Patrick, to protecting the bump. And I thought that was just a fun way to say it. So she stopped using normal racing bicycles and moved to more like a BMX bicycle. So to protect the belly, so the bump wouldn't sag on a normal bicycle, but on a mountain bike, the pelvis protects the baby. And she just had a whole list of things, like certain exercises, like, you might have to really reconsider the hinge at this time and the squat, and just make sure. I wish our friend Sarah was here today, but really doing work on the pelvic floor, making sure the pelvic floor is safe and strong. I don't want to give too much in the world of weightlifting because it really has to be done. My daughter Kelly lifted deep into her pregnancy with Danny, but she used machines. And the nice thing about machines is that, especially if you sit down, you're protecting the bump. And I thought that was really good. From my experience with my wife and with my daughters, Kelly and Lindsay, walking is great. Walking is a joy and a wonder. Walk as long as you can. But I would take care of as many things as you can now, because once baby shows up, I would say some things in your life will change rather permanently, I would say. But really, any exercise you can do, great. Always remember the bump. Protect the bump, protect the bump, protect the bump. Walking is wonderful. Do your best with nutrition, because we're feeding the future, and any chores that need to be done, do them now. Do not think you're going to put on a new roof in June this year. It ain't going to happen. Okay, if it has to be done, do it now. Okay.
So yeah, I guess there's two ways to take this. One is during the pregnancy, and then one is when the baby has actually been delivered. So I think all the advice Dan gave there is great. When we were pregnant with our first Roan, the general medical advice we got, and we were fortunate to have doctors who were also into fitness, and they knew a thing or two about exercise, which is not always the case. And the general advice there was, if you're already doing something, you can probably keep doing something unless maybe it doesn't protect the bump, right? So like if you're already lifting and strength training for the woman, you can probably keep doing that. You might want to adjust some exercise selection, as Dan was saying, or intensity. But it definitely wouldn't be a time to begin doing something like that.
It's very good.
That seemed eminently reasonable to me. And you actually can see, if you have my Paleo Workouts for Dummies book, terrible, as Dan John calls, a terrific book with a terrible title. You'll see my wife in some of the pictures with her big bump. She was a model for the planks. The planks were approved, so we used her in that book. After baby comes, I'm gonna actually emphasize what Dan John said about walking as well, because this is a great strategy. I'll tell you why. One is it's healthy. It's good for you to do. Let you spend time with your wife and the kid. But there is some percentage of a chance that your child will fall asleep during that walk, and nap time workouts are going to be your go-to, my friends, right? So if you can do the walking and you can't always bank on this, right? You have to leave a lot of it to Providence, of course, but if you do a nice long walk, you get your exercise in anyways. If the child falls asleep, you turn around, you start heading back home, and you hope the kid stays asleep for 10 to 20 more minutes so you can get in a good kettlebell workout with your wife. And I cannot tell you how many times that is exactly what we did, and that and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that's the name of the game, my friends. You just gotta improvise, as we say. So that's, as Dan John said, get the basics down, so that way you can improvise. So you have the proficiency that you can, when the opportunity arises, take advantage of it.
And things are going to change. Yes.
And of course, there's the tag teams too. So my wife and I still do this. Our kids are older enough now, but we still got little Marin. She's just over a year old. So, just sacrifice for each other. Hey, I'll take care of the baby for 20, 40 minutes while you go work out. Then we'll switch.
That's a great idea. Yeah. That's
And that's
very good.
very good. Okay, let's move on here. Trisha wants advice on, this is a classic one, preserving muscle while dropping body fat. What do we have here? That's essentially the holy grail, right? That's
well, no, but she said preserving. Pardon, Marion said preserving.
That's right, which is more realistic indeed.
Which is much more realistic. No matter what, it seems like when they do good research on rapid body fat loss, there always is some muscle mass lost. But I've always thought, pardon me, Patrick, that part of it is that some of the muscle you have, like, if you lose 50 pounds of body fat, part of the reason you lose some muscle is because some of that muscle was supporting that load 24/7. So, obviously it's going to be diet, and diet. But lifting weights, especially high tension lifting, seems to help with keeping muscle mass when quickly dropping body fat. And it's almost counterintuitive to think that low rep bench press, low rep deadlift, anything that's high tension will keep muscle mass. You would think it'd be the hypertrophy moves, leg extension, leg curl, push pull stuff, curls, triceps, in that 8 to 12 range. But really, it seems to be that tension holds on to muscle mass. A person I would encourage you to read is Rusty Moore, and I think his site is visual strength or something like that. But Rusty Moore, Moore, he really does good work with this, and basically it's high tension stuff. He does base it on Pavel's book, Power to the People. But the idea would be you could do something as easy as 3 sets of 3 in a press, 3 sets of 3 in a rack deadlift, but really holding on the tension the whole time. And then, of course, scoot out for a walk, a ruck, a run, a row, whatever, okay?
Right. So Dan John and his genius with a capital J is absolutely right. The biggest thing, if you're cutting down, is to just keep some form of resistance training in play, and also make sure you're getting enough protein. Those are...
and get enough protein. I can't believe I missed the obvious. That was an easy target right there. But yes, pardon me this morning, but trying to gain muscle while losing body fat, that's the one I get asked so often, Pat. And I tell you, I don't know how to do it without the use of really serious amounts of drugs.
It comes back to the idea that we've talked about in generalism before, this idea of short-term specialization, that if you try and pursue all things at once, you'll run in circles, because some of these goals are mutually conflicting. In one instance, we're trying to drive energy intake down. In another instance, we might need an energy surplus. So it's like, well, what the heck are we going to do, right? So you're better off taking the approach of this gentle listener of saying, okay, I'm going to just focus on body composition and fat loss. I'm just going to try and preserve as much muscle as possible. That's the realistic thing to do. Then once you're happy with your body fat percentage or levels, then you say, okay, now I'm going to focus on gaining strength or muscle, and I'll try and preserve or maintain my body fat levels as much as possible. And so you segment it, right? You go after one and then the other, and it's this kind of balance between, pushing in one area and maintaining or preserving in another.
The people who've done best on my program called Mass Made Simple take my advice that's in the book, and they lean out before they bulk up. And I honestly think you should go on the most vicious diet you can possibly find before Mass Made Simple, like the Velocity diet, the 6 protein shake a day. I mean, crazy stuff. I mean, really harsh. The fast mimicking diet, the 5-day, 500 calorie, where you just eat vegetables for 5 days. And people go, why? Well, because when you decide to bulk up, you're now actively interested in eating everything you see, and B, I think the body gets it. Okay, this was a fast. This is more of a feast. The body, it can follow along what you're trying to do. Whereas if you're trying to do both at the same time, I was reading about the boat called the Clipper. It was check that, the plane called the Clipper. It was a plane that was also a boat. It was a horrible boat and a terrible plane. There was a car in the 50s that was a car that you could drive out onto a lake. It was a terrible boat, a terrible car. Whenever you try to combine two things into one, you can make it happen. It's just not going to be very good at anything.
Right. Next, we want something that's also a fork and a hairbrush.
Yeah, that's actually kind of interesting. I like
that. That one might work. That one might work, Dan. Who knows? Don't write it off just yet.
Yeah, some listener's going to patent that thing tonight. Yeah.
If we just made you rich, you got to cut us a check. That's the least you can do. All right.
$1.
Yeah. All right. Next one comes from Itzael. He says, "Hello, Pat and Dan. I would like you to ramble about training diaries, digital or analog. What's worth including in your training logs? For example, what do you eat? The exercises? How do you feel? How do you review old ones, etc." So he just wants us to go on about training diaries, and make sure you use the word diary with your big, strong male clients too. Press them. Where's your diary? Don't let them get away with training logs or any other word. It's got to definitely.
Mine goes back to 71, and I've done the food journals in there. And I'm not very good at that, because that means you have to go in 3 to 5 times a day, kind of, or the next day you're sitting there and go, I don't remember. So and then I have done online. In fact, I have mine at Dan John University now. One of the problems with doing it online is people ask you questions about the exercises or the workouts, and that's fine. I don't mind it, but sometimes you're like, well, it's the Pat Flynn special, dancing monkey exercise, and then they ask you what that is, and it's like, oh, okay, and then it's just a stupid name I have for something, I notice with my online stuff, it doesn't stay up as long. I had a diary at a place called Strong as Steel, and one day I went in and the site was gone. So now, fortunately, I had cut and pasted some of the stuff just for other uses, and so I was able to keep some of it. That's my knock on online, is that you never know, it's just going to up and vanish. It is interesting to go back to my older journals. I did that not long ago. I did a deep dive, in fact. When I write down in 1990, I can't believe Kelly is 5 years old. Well, she's 30 now. And it's just that 95, I guess it was. But it does give you a chance sometimes to go back, and I'll look at things, and honestly, when I die, if my journals survive and people go through them, they'll realize that, I don't have a plan to do anything. Everything I do is just I'm constantly adapting and changing. I'm constantly learning the exact same lessons. It's the number one thing I discovered. So I like written because I know it. Pardon me. I know there's a real good chance it's going to be around. I like online because I type much faster than I handwrite. So for me,
just a few things here. I'm with you. The food logging is much more tedious, but I think as a short-term auditing process, it is extremely valuable. If somebody is struggling with weight loss and they're saying, I'm doing everything right, I know I'm doing everything right, I promise you I'm doing everything right, probably they're not doing everything right. And that's when you need to say, hey, I need you to just do this tedious thing. If it goes in your mouth, it goes on the paper, right? And you don't have to do this for your entire life. Now, some people don't mind logging in the long term. That if we're being honest and frank with everybody, is a slim minority of people. Most people find food logging to be very tedious, but I find that as a short-term auditing process and as a way for people to build self-awareness of saying, oh, I'm not doing everything right. I didn't realize that I was having an extra 300 calories here, an extra 500 calories there. It's quite invaluable. It's quite invaluable, and not just for weight loss, but weight gain as well. Because sometimes people be like, they think they're eating enough, and then you do this audit and you realize you're not. You're not eating enough. So it's not the point I'm getting at is that our general self-awareness is often inadequate when it comes to nutrition. It really is. So as a short-term thing, I think the food logs are really valuable if you're struggling with either gaining or losing weight. And then I agree with everything that Dan John said, the training logs long-term. It's just cool to be able to not just go back and look at that, but leave it behind. Not to get too much of an aside, but that's kind of what I like about these podcasts and these YouTube things that we do as well. Dan, is whatever else anybody else thinks about them, there's just something that I kind of like about the idea that even after I'm evaporated, my children can come, and I don't know if they'll like watching any of these or what, but there's just something nice. And aside from those frequent moments when I make an absolute fool of myself, I'm kind of happy that something will kind of be there.
That'd be nice. That's a good point. One thought that did pop through my head in those truly invasive diet studies where your food is regimented and measured exactly. Very often people lose a lot of weight in 2 weeks because they, for once, are actually eating the number of calories they think they're eating. Very often, especially Americans, our portion control is our issue. That's the number one thing I get when I go to Europe. They'll always say, your portions are just so ridiculous. A Coke in Europe is still 6 ounces. 6 ounces. And by God, if you gave a kid a 6-ounce Coke here in Southern California,
they'd protest.
They would, yeah. I mean, those things they have at those convenience stores, the gulps, the small one is what, 40-something ounces?
Well, look at this. So Chick-fil-A is doing free coffee in fall. So I went and got myself a free coffee, but I'm pretty sure this is like a soda cup, isn't it?
It's good size, yeah. Well, yeah, and then here's and then look, there's the one you get in the hotel,
Right. And I'm not saying that this much coffee is bad. Don't get me wrong, right?
It's
that's necessary, right? But if you fill this thing with soda, now we've got an issue.
Yeah.
Very, very, very good. We got what do we want to do? We want to squeeze in one more here, Dan, or how are you doing on time?
Well, don't forget, I'm an hour ahead of where I'm, so it's not even 8 o'clock for me yet. So
you're in the future. It's crazy.
Yeah, my wife is in fact falling back asleep. Oh, I just got a finger from her, and you can only guess which one it was.
The pinky. It's the whole pinky.
Yes, gentle listener, it wasn't the pinky. Yes.
All right, we'll squeeze in one more here, and then we'll let Dan John get on with his vacation. Jesse says, is it possible that if a person has underactive glutes, that while performing the kettlebell swing, they are further encouraging overactive hamstrings and underactive glutes? There's a term for this, right? The gluteal amnesia, that was a term that was floating along for a couple of years. Whatever happened to that? Did everyone's glutes wake up?
I still use it. The problem, what was the listener's name?
Jesse.
Yeah, Jesse, it's not going into the hamstrings. Generally, it'll go into the lower back. The lower back suddenly gets put in a real compromised position. I don't know how you would swing correctly without using your glutes, but hey, anything's possible. If you don't mind, can we ask Jesse to send in the video? Or if it's just a general question, then if it's specific to you, Jesse, send in a video. But if it's just a general question, that's why I'm a big believer in doing the hip thrust and doing the Bulgarian goat bag swing and all those others as part of the training for the kettlebell swing. If you go to my YouTube channel, I've got a thing called Kettlebell Basics or something like that. And it's got all the important stuff about this. If you want the full video, it's on danjohnuniversity.com. But trust me, we put the best stuff on the short video just as a courtesy. But there's a couple of issues. One thing, when we do the slower grinding hinges, I almost always now have the person put their toes up on some kind of thing, either plates or now I'm just having people stand on PVC pipes, so that freezes the ankle, which makes it you're not going to excessively use the ankle, which changes everything upstream. If you have any kind of glute band or even mini bands, put them around your knees and push out while you do slow hinges and see if that helps. Of course, do the hip thrust, which will help immensely. These are all kind of prophylactic, but if you're doing the ballistic swing and you've got glute issues, I think you're insane because you're just going to mess up your lower back.
All right. Excellent stuff. You mentioned Dan John University. Let's hear the updates, Dan. What can people look forward to over there this week?
Well, every week Brian does more and more. Well, now he has the workout generators that you can add a lot. You have a lot more. It's interesting because now that we've been around a year and change, people have been doing the workouts for a year and they're starting to run into the same thing we all do. As you train, you suddenly hit plateaus or just reality. And so now there's a lot more variation. You can go into the workout generator and change a day or two here. You can lighten up the sets. You can increase them. And that all, by the way, that's all generator. That input is generated by the readers. And I say this constantly, man. Feedback is the key. You've got to have feedback to improve, and so that's big. I wrote an article this week on stretch reflex. It's for the book Easy Strength, but I made a point in there is that what we're constantly trying to do with athletes is turn their body into a bow and arrow. When it's, a good discus throw, it's like you set your body up as the bow and snap, it takes off. Mm-hmm. Off season and preseason training is I like this little line. I know it's silly, but to get a bigger bow, a stronger bowstring, and a tougher arrow. And I thought that was kind of a nice way to explain the relationship between the body and the training. Mm-hmm. I thought so.
Absolutely. So very good. And any other updates, Dan? Anything else you're working on or want to make an announcement about before we say goodbye? Any new books? I know you're always working on a new writing project.
Well, with Easy Strength with Pavel, we all the contracts are signed and we're starting to work on it.
Wow! Just remember, folks, that was breaking here first on the path.
Broken here. In fact, someone listening to this sprinted. I tell you, over to Strong First and posted it. And Pavel then responded, "Yes, we are working on it." And it's funny because the feedback is almost all the feedback I'm reading is stuff I've been talking about for 12 years. But I guess I just got to be. I don't know where I can put it that people will read it. It's kind of like the Bible, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. Everybody's an expert, but no one's ever read it. Yeah, that's funny.
It is funny. Well, I am really looking forward to that, Dan. Fantastic stuff. Always a great conversation. Hope you enjoy your vacation. Have a wonderful holiday. Are we good for next week?
Absolutely. And yeah, I will. I look forward to talking to you again.
Sounds good, Dan. See ya.